Muscles and bones are arguably the most vital components of your body. Were it not for our bones, we would be heaps of flesh with no structure. And if it were not for our muscles, we would not be able to move. As such, these two systems are the most important to life. Within our body, there are three types of muscles: the smooth, skeletal, and cardiac muscles. Skeletal muscles are essential for our movement because they are directly linked to our skeleton via tendons. These are the only muscles that we have complete control over. Smooth muscles, otherwise known as involuntary muscles, compose the linings of our organs all across our body. These muscles are controlled by a portion of the brainstem, thus you do not have to think about digesting food or pumping blood. The last type of muscle is the cardiac, and this is only found in the heart. The muscle gets a special classification because it is not smooth, despite being involuntary, and it is not skeletal, despite its structure. The biggest thing to remember about muscles is that they will only contract. As such, muscles will come in pairs or groups, these being called antagonistic pairs, containing an antagonist and an agonist. As an example, your bicep and tricep function as a pair, the bicep being the antagonist as you pull your forearm up, and the tricep being the agonist as you extend it again. The contraction of muscle occurs in a reaction between myosin strands and actin. When you contract a muscle, ATP and calcium is released, which removes a barrier from in between the myosin and actin. The myosin then crawls along the actin, pulling it back and contracting the muscle. Within the bones of the human body, there are many layers and structures. The outermost layer is named the periosteum, meaning around the bone, and it contains blood vessels and nerve cells. The second layer is the compact bone, which is the layer that provides the most structural strength and integrity through its lamella, rolled up layers of proteins and minerals. The next layer is the spongy bone, which, despite its name, is not very spongy. Instead, it is called spongy because of how porous it is. These pores are then filled with red bone marrow in our long bones. On the topic of bone marrow, there are two types within our bodies. They are red marrow, which produces blood cells, and yellow marrow, which stores fat and nutrients within our bones. The head contains more bones than one would expect by looking at a skull. However, the function of these bones is rather limited. The cranium contains various plates above the brain, which are connected by sutures and named after the lobe they are on top of. These plates are the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. The main function of the plates is to protect our brain. Multiple bones are also involved in mechanical digestion. These would be the mandible or lower jaw, maxilla, upper jaw, and, to an extent, the zygomatic bones, which are the cheekbones. A fun fact with the cranial bones is that there is a structural bone named the sella turcica, which protects our pituitary gland, and its name translates to turkey saddle. Seeing as the head is the most vital part of essentially our entire body, it would make sense for there to be a lot of muscles here. As such, we focused on only the most important for certain processes, these being communication, eating, and movement. With expressional muscles, we have the frontalis and occipitalis pair, which raises and lowers the eyebrows, the depressor anguli oris, or the frowning muscle, the orbicularis oris, which controls the lips, and the orbicularis oculi, the blinking muscle. With respect to chewing, we have the temporalis, or your temples, and the masseter. An easy way to remember masseter is mass eater, as animals are bulk eaters.
The time has come for this cookie! Nom, nom, nom.
With moving our head, the primary muscle is the sternocleidomastoid, which connects to your clavicle, sternum, and the mastoid process. That is located behind your ears.
Now we continue onto the bones in the upper body, anything above the pelvis and below the neck. Right below the neck we have the clavicle or the collarbone. The clavicle is a curved anterior bone of the shoulder girdle. It functions as a strut for supporting the shoulder and the sternum. Connecting the clavicle to the humerus, our upper arm, is the scapula. It is a large triangular-shaped bone that lies in the upper back. The scapula is supported by a complex system of muscles that work together to help move the arm, making up the thorax or the sternum and the ribs. The sternum is a long flat bone located at the center of the chest. It connects to the ribs using cartilage and forms the front of the rib cage. This allows it to protect major organs including the heart, lungs, and blood vessels. The rib cage partially encloses and protects the chest cavities where the major organs are located. It is made of ribs, long curved individual bones that are connected to the spinal vertebrae. There are 12 pairs of ribs. The first 7 are labeled as true ribs because they are connected to cartilage, which is connected to the sternum. Finishing up the upper body is the lumbar vertebrae. The lumbar vertebrae are the 5 vertebrae between the rib cage and the pelvis. They are the largest segments of the vertebral column and are characterized by the absence of facets on the sides of the body. They help support the weight of the body and permit movement. Making up the top portion of the chest is the pectoralis major. The pectoralis major is a thick fan-shaped muscle which makes up the bulk of the chest muscles. It lies under the breast and is above the pectoralis minor and contributes to the movement of the humerus. Below the pecs are the abdominal muscles. They form the abdominal wall, which consists of the external abdominal obliques, the internal abdominal obliques, the rectus abdominis, and the transversus abdominis. These muscles work to form a firm wall that protects the viscera, which are internal organs, and help to maintain erect posture. In our back, we have the latissimus dorsi. The latissimus dorsi is one of the largest muscles in the back. It is responsible for the extension, transverse extension of the back and spines, and also adductions, which means to bring a body part to the body's midline. An example of this is bringing your arms to your side. The long bone in the upper arm is the humerus. It is located between the shoulder, where it connects to the scapula, and the elbow joint. The elbow joint connects to the radius and ulna. The radius is a bone in the forearm and extends from the lateral side of the elbow to the thumb side of the wrist. The ulna is a long bone in the forearm that extends from the elbow to the pinky finger. It runs parallel to the ulna and is the longer and larger of the two bones. Now we move on to the upper body muscles. The deltoid muscle is a rounded triangular muscle located on the uppermost part of the arm and on top of the shoulder. It allows the humerus to rotate. A fun fact is that it is named after the Greek letter delta, which is shaped like an equilateral triangle. Below the deltoids and forming a pair are biceps brachii and triceps brachii. More commonly known as the bicep brachii is a two-headed muscle, which means two parts in the upper arm, consisting of the long head and the short head. It flexes and supinates, which means turning the forearm.
Let's get down to business to defeat the Huns.
The tricep brachii, or tricep, is a large three-headed muscle in the upper arm, consisting of the long head and medial head and lateral head. It is primarily responsible for the extension or straightening of the arm.
When you try your best but you don't succeed.
We all know that at the end of our arms we have our hands. The wrist or carpus is made up of carpals and consists of 8 small bones. It connects the hand to the forearm and allows movement of the hand. The metacarpals make up the metacarpus and form the intermediate part of the hand, located between the phalanges of the fingers and the carpus. Classified as long bones, the phalanges are digital bones in our hands and feet that make up the fingers and toes. There are 2 major groups of muscles in the hand. They are the extrinsic muscles and the intrinsic muscles. The extrinsic muscles are located in the anterior and posterior compartments of the forearm. They produce a strong grip. The intrinsic muscles of the hand are located in the hand itself and are responsible for the fine motor functions of the hand. There are 2 major subgroups of the intrinsic muscles, and they are the thenar muscles and the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle. The thenar muscles consist of the flexor pollicis brevis, abductor pollicis brevis, opponens pollicis. Together they form the bulge at the base of the thumb, known as the thenar eminence, and are responsible for the fine movements of the thumb. The flexor digitorum superficialis muscle extends from the base of the forearm and splits into all 4 fingers. They allow the hand to flex and make a fist.
Now we continue into the lower body, the pelvis and down. The lower body supports the rest of the body by carrying its weight. The pelvis is a structure comprised of several bones between the abdomen and the thighs. The bones of the pelvis form the pelvic cavity, which consists mainly of the reproductive organs and the rectum. The pelvic floor is found at the base of the pelvic cavity and assists in supporting the organs of the abdomen as well as the organs of the pelvis. One of the main bone groups of the pelvis is the sacrum, which connects the spine with the pelvis. There are 5 sacral vertebrae of the sacrum which are fused together with the iliac bones in a ring to form the pelvic girdle. Its main function is to connect the spine with the iliac or hip bones and the coccyx. Also known as the tailbone, the coccyx is found immediately below the sacrum and is the smallest, most inferior bone in the spinal column. It is a vestige structure of the caudal vertebrae found in most mammals. Within the human body, it functions as an anchor point of several muscles of the pelvic region and acts as one of the bones that supports the body's weight while sitting. Known collectively as the glutes, the gluteus medius, minimus, and maximus are part of the main muscle group that anchors to the coccyx. Of the 3 muscles, the gluteus maximus is the most dominant and well-known muscle. It is the main extensor muscle of the hip, and it makes up a large portion of the shape and appearance of each side of the hips. Its fleshy mass and a quadrilateral shape forms the prominence of the buttocks. The first bone of the leg is the femur, or thigh bone. The femur is the largest bone in the body and helps to support the body's weight and locomotion. It connects to the pelvis through the hip joint and the knee at the knee joint. The knee joint is protected by the kneecap, or the patella. The patella is a thick, circular triangular bone that covers and protects the anterior articular surface of the knee joint. Continuing down through the leg, there are 2 bones between the knee and the ankle. Also known as the shin bone, the tibia is the innermost bone of the 2 in the lower leg. It functions in supporting the body's weight and locomotion. The lateral bone that runs parallel to the tibia is the fibula. The fibula plays a very important role in stabilizing the ankle and supporting the muscles of the lower leg. The leg consists of several muscles, all layered on top of one another. Of the many muscles of the leg, there are 3 main muscles, 2 of which have an antagonistic relationship. The sartorius is the longest muscle in the human body and is a long, thin, superficial muscle that runs down the length of the thigh and the anterior compartment. This muscle aids in flexing, adducting, and rotating the hip, as well as the flexing of the knee. The 2 muscles which have an antagonistic or push-pull relationship are the biceps femoris and the rectus femoris. The biceps femoris and the rectus femoris's relationship is very similar to that of the biceps brachii and the triceps brachii found in the upper body. The biceps femoris is located on the posterior side of the leg and helps to contract and pull the lower leg in. The rectus femoris acts to extend the leg and relax the biceps femoris. Of the lower leg, there are 2 prominent muscles that form the calf, the gastrocnemius medial and the lateral head. The gastrocnemius means stomach, gastro, of the leg, nemius. These 2 muscles work together to allow for various bipedal movements, including walking, running, and jumping. The bones of the feet are broken up into 3 groups: the tarsus, the metatarsus, and the phalanges. The tarsus or tarsals is a cluster of 7 articulating bones in each foot located between the lower end of the tibia and fibula of the lower leg and the metatarsus. The metatarsus or metatarsals is a group of 5 long bones in the foot situated between the lower end of the tarsus and the hind and midfoot of the phalanges of the toes. The phalanges is the last and most articulating group of the foot. It consists of long bones and are the digits of the feet. There are 100 muscles in the human foot, but there are 2 main muscles that function in the foot's movement. The abductor hallucis muscle is one of the hallux muscles and serves to move the big toe away from the other toes. This muscle and muscle group pertains to the movement of the foot. The extensor digitorum longus muscle helps with the dorsiflexion of the foot, eversion of the foot, and extensions of the toes.
Hey, it's me again. As many of you likely know, many chemicals have influence over the muscles of the body. Specifically, the most well-known are adrenaline and testosterone. Adrenaline is the hormone responsible for the rush of energy you feel when in dangerous situations. The reason this happens is due to the increased flow of oxygen and glucose production. With sex hormones, namely testosterone and estrogen, there are two different effects for either gender. Testosterone allows for increased muscle gain, while estrogen increases the rate at which muscles regenerate. This is believed to be the cause for cramps during menopause, a period when women no longer produce estrogen. One of the lesser known hormones is cortisol, a stress hormone that your body produces. This hormone, when present in your body for long periods of time, will cause atrophication of your muscles, essentially the destruction of muscle cells. As you might imagine, getting a disease or disorder that affects one of your most vital systems would have disastrous consequences. One disorder that can severely affect a patient's life is Klippel-Feil syndrome, a disorder where the topmost spinal plates will fuse together, sometimes even fusing to the cranium. This causes a physical deformation and limits the range of movement of the head. A far more horrifying disease is fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, more commonly known as stone man disease. This disorder causes the body to slowly replace connective tissues and muscle with bone through ossification. The process slowly paralyzes the patient and, should they not die before completion, essentially an entire second skeleton will grow on top of their original.
The strongest muscle in the entire human body relative to its size is the tongue. When babies are born, they have over 300 bones in their body, but over time, they fuse as the adult skeleton forms. On the topic of babies and their bone structure, the soft spot on the baby's head is caused by the lack of strength in the coronal suture located between the frontal and parietal plates. Some people have large skin deposits or flaps on the back of their necks. This pileup of skin is caused by a weak occipitalis muscle as it cannot support all of the weight.